It's set. Super Bowl 58, 49ers in Chiefs, an amazing comeback win for the San Francisco 49ers, and Patrick Mahomes remains the boogeyman to the rest of the AFC, and the Chiefs advance over the Baltimore Ravens. All that and more coming up on today's Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look into the NFL on the field and in the front office. With elite breakdowns, next-level analysis, and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Love all the everydayers out there that are with us as we go through Super Bowl week, Senior Bowl week as well. So it's draft season, and we'll get to that later on in the week. But, man, today, Super Bowl 58 is set. We got to break down NFC and AFC Championship games, and today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code, all lowercase, LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Man, I cannot believe we're sitting here on Monday morning, Matt, and the 49ers came back 24-7 to beat the Lions after what I saw in the first half of that football game. And I want to start with the first half because Ben Johnson, more on him a little bit later in the show, he's going to be a head coach. And so that was probably the last game that Ben Johnson coaches with the Detroit Lions. And what a game plan he had. They were humming on the offensive side of the ball, and the 49ers could not stop them. And for a team that is running the ball as well as the Lions were, and to have a multi-score lead, that is usually a death nail for their opponent. Yeah. In fact, that is the strategy that Kyle Shanahan's 49ers have used to compile so many wins to get themselves into the NFC Championship game the last 3 years, into the NFC Championship game. And that's just something you can't come back from. If you have a multi-score lead, your team is running the ball well, and the other team can't stop it, it's game over. And it turned out, Matt, that it wasn't game over. And the point that the point in time where it all flipped was, okay, 49ers received the second half kickoff. They went down the field, they kicked the field goal. It's like, okay, actually, good job. That's what, if both teams are kicking field goals and time is ticking off the clock, that is a win for the Detroit Lions. And they're still up 2 touchdowns at that point. But after the ensuing kickoff, Jahmyr Gibbs fumbles. Eric Armstead recovers the fumble. 49ers go and score 7 points. Now it's a 1-touchdown game, and the crowd is into it. And say what you want about momentum, that momentum shifted. That football game flipped on a dime to start the third quarter. And by the end of the third quarter, it was already completely tied up, Matt.
Yeah, I want to hear tons of your thoughts on this game, and congratulations to your Niners as well as the Chiefs for advancing. Wanted to throw this out there. First of all, I'm sure some Ravens folks and Ravens critics won't look at it this way, but I still think it's a highly successful season, basically for any NFL team to reach the Final Four. And obviously, errors and mistakes were kind of the theme of the weekend in terms of, did these teams win it or did the other team lose it? I thought the Gibbs fumble was the biggest play of the game. And I know people will crush Dan Campbell for going for it on fourth on several occasions. And I do want to talk about that. I have mixed feelings on that. I don't think that's the whole culprit. Frankly, I don't know if you agree with me, and I'm sure coaching has a lot to do with this, but the Niners' big-time players really came to play in the second half, and the Lions didn't. The Gibbses and St. Browns and Laportas, and frankly, I thought Goff played a really good game start to finish. But running the ball and time of possession couldn't have been any different than this tale of two halves.
It was really unbelievable.
It really is.
It's one thing for one team to start playing better in the second half, which the 49ers absolutely did, but you still need help for a game to go that way. And they got help. in the form of a fumble, in the form of a couple drops. And even early in the third quarter, it didn't feel like that much of a big deal. And in fact, Josh Reynolds is on the sideline kind of smiling and laughing after they didn't get that fourth down because he dropped a ball that he probably should have.
Right.
Tough catch, but he probably should have caught it. But they were still loose at that point. It was like, whatever. It's gravy. We're going to go to the Super Bowl, right? And obviously that was not to be. So a lot of things have to happen. And those things all did happen for the Niners and against the Lions in the second half. But the big problem I have with going for it on the first fourth down, especially that one that Reynolds dropped, is at that point in the game, getting 3 points and running time off the clock, as I mentioned earlier, is so much your friend that the benefit of getting a fourth down is not as much as how the benefit for the opponent if you don't get that fourth down, and give them some confidence and give them just a little bit of a foothold, which the 49ers took advantage of there. And I understand that you're aggressive and that's what got you there. And the percentages might have said it was a good call, bad call. It was probably pretty close to 50-50, I'm guessing. And so in that case, when you have a big lead, that's when being conservative helps. And I do think it was the wrong call, and clearly it was the wrong call. But as Nick Bosa put it after the game, it helped the 49ers so much to get that stop, and their confidence all of a sudden was just sky high. And it was within 2 possessions of the start of the third quarter. It was early in the third quarter where all of a sudden, wow, the 49ers are already back in this game.
Yeah, I'm glad. I like the way you said that. Like, going for it there on fourth down and converting, maybe that gets you 25 cents. But if you don't convert, it costs you $1. You know what I mean? It wasn't 100 to 100, I mean, by any stretch. And in a vacuum, you look at it and say, analytics tell me to go for it. And, and I probably make it more than I don't, or even if it is 50-50. But sometimes, and I think great coaches, Belichick's the best I can remember, sometimes you just have to be a firefighter and realize that over the course of the game, little fires are going to pop up, and when you have a nice lead like the Lions do, a little fire is very manageable. Let's just put that out. Don't have any chance of throwing gas on it. And not making it on fourth down, you sprinkled a little lighter fluid on it.
Right. And that it needs to be said, though, that if you convert that fourth down,
of course,
a couple drops here and there, maybe the game is over.
Sure. And if Ayuk doesn't catch that one off the face mask, I mean, it's kind of like the Falcons, losing the lead in the Super Bowl to the Patriots. You need a series of bad things to happen.
It's never just one thing.
Right.
But, and Dan Campbell's going to be criticized, and I think rightly so with the game management and how that went at the end. And Ben Johnson's call of the run play where you got to throw the ball into the end zone, so you have all 3 timeouts, so you have an opportunity to win it late. I thought that was a really bad. I keep coming back. One of the biggest plays at the very end of the game that could have helped the Lions have a shot to try to get the ball back one more time and try to win it is the tight end Ferkser that apparently was his first catch of the season.
Oh, that's funny you brought that up.
I've never seen a boat turn slower than Ferkser. In the end zone. What are you doing? He could not turn 90 degrees right and get into the end zone. That was a touchdown. And that was before the run play they got.
Let me stop you because this is hilarious. So I'm 6'3" and I'm very stiff and I am a terrible athlete. My son is 6'5" now, 17 years old, and unfortunately takes after dad in terms of changing directions. And we're watching that play together, and he just stops. He's like, me or you maybe make that turn better. I'm like, Penny Sewell gets in and that guy does it. Like, that's the stiffest guy I've ever seen in my life. And I was so proud of my son. He's like, I might be a scout. Like,
he's
that was
outside, maybe not the short area quicks.
Right. Exactly.
When it happened, I thought it was a Laporta, and I was like, oh man, Laporta's knee must be really bad because he can't move right now. And then it turned out to be a different guy. And it was
there's a battleship turning changing directions, right?
Just like all those little things just added up, and it just kept adding up for the Detroit Lions. Maybe even a little overconfident. CJ Gardner-Johnson's waving goodbye to 49ers fans on the sideline in the second quarter of the game. And so maybe it was a factor of being a little too loose, overconfident for the Detroit Lions, because man, once that crowd was into it, And after a couple of drives of the first or the second half, it felt like a different ball game. And this is how the second half ended for the 49ers drives. Field goal, touchdown, touchdown, field goal, touchdown, kneel down victory formation. So they scored on every drive of the second half except for kneeling down to end the football game. So 27 unanswered points, came back from 17 down to actually go up 10 points before that last score from the Detroit Lions. That one flipped. Not only was it an amazing comeback, but that one flipped, and that deficit was erased faster than any big game I can remember in recent history.
100%. And Purdy's legs were a great factor. He used them very smart, as a runner and buying time. And this will really lead us to Ravens Chiefs. But I thought, you mentioned after a series of things starts going bad and they're super loose about it still. But then at the end, then you start gripping the club a little too tight.
That's exactly what happens. You go from instantly, oh no, now you're tight. And now all of a sudden the walls are caving in. The fans are going crazy. The other team is super confident all of a sudden. And it's a really good football team on the other side, which you kind of forget about because of how the first half went.
Yeah. And then you're trying to put out an inferno. It's a forest fire and you're sitting there with a hose trying to put it out. And I'm not trying to jump ahead, but I thought the Ravens, especially after that Chiefs first drive that was just ding, 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 got real tight.
Yes. Okay. So more on, you mentioned Purdy. We got to finish up this Niners-Lions game. More on Purdy, more on Patrick Mahomes and what he did to help the Chiefs advance over the Baltimore Ravens next. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. So easy, in fact, you can turn $10 into $250. And all you got to do is pick 2 to 6 players. And guess what? You're not playing against pros. You're not battling thousands of other players and sharks in the pool. It's just you against the stat projections at Prize Picks. You against the numbers. You pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 players and win up to 25 times your money on Super Bowl Sunday. And NBA Prize Picks as well. Tons of stat projections for tons of sports out there. You can even do a combo as well. And obviously, Travis Kelce and George Kittle in the Super Bowl, a couple of really good tight ends. And you can do combo bets, say Steph Curry and George Kittle or LeBron James and Travis Kelce, 10.5 combo of 3 points made plus receptions on Super Bowl Sunday. So tons of ways to play at Prize Picks. Win up to 25 times your money. It is daily fantasy made easy. And all you got to do is download the app or go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. That is prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy. So Brock Purdy, where you at on Brock Purdy, Matt? We gotta rewind all the way back to the beginning of the season, preseason. The team I cover, the 49ers, the team you cover, the Pittsburgh Steelers, faced off. And at that point, we didn't know a lot about Brock Purdy. He had that amazing run to end the season, got injured in the NFC Championship game. And you thought, Purdy, Pickett, one's the first rounder, one's the last pick in the draft. Pretty amazing. Yep. So maybe they're closer together in talent than that. But, maybe if Pickett was on the Niners and Purdy was on the Steelers, Pickett would look a lot better than Brock Purdy potentially.
Yeah.
And, it didn't take long into the season where you realized, maybe whatever Pickett is, I don't know, but Brock Purdy's got something to him. And the thing that Brock Purdy has to him that I have witnessed that has really set it apart, because the scouting part is easy. He's not the biggest guy. He obviously, it's not a laser show when he's throwing the football, right? He has a base level of, can he make the throws? He can make the throws, but he doesn't have any extra. There's no extra credit for what his arm is. And in fact, we see in conditions, if Brock Purdy was playing in Buffalo, we talked about this last week. Brock Purdy's playing in Buffalo, bad conditions, maybe that arm isn't optimal because the conditions would take you below suboptimal level of where his arm is. But in sunny California, rains occasionally. It's not a big problem, but his playmaker ability and really his guts, like he has the guts of a burglar to go steal that win against the Packers when he was bad for 3.5 quarters and the team was bad, to come back and win. bad in the first half is the team, and it wasn't really Purdy. And like you mentioned with Goff, Purdy and Goff actually played really good games. Both of them did. And late though, Brock Purdy just embodies the team that Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch have put together with the 49ers. They're a high character group, and they didn't fold. They've played 2.5 to 3 good quarters of football in the playoffs, Matt, and they're going to the Super Bowl. Right.
Yeah.
First of all, they got to fix that and start faster, and more on that as we get ready for the Super Bowl. But they don't fold, and Brock Purdy has this level that you need to play quarterback at a high level in the NFL. And I know people don't want to believe because his physicality, and he's a 7th round pick, and it's only the coaching and the talent around him that makes him play well. But he's got something. He is such a playmaker, and he has got the most amount of guts to still make those anticipatory throws, even though things aren't going well, and trust his guys. And then, of course, we saw the legs, him making plays. There's extra there, not just whatever, quote unquote, game manager, whatever you want to call him. There's plays he makes that helps his team and pulls his team to victory. And you saw a lot of that, and you saw all of it in the second half, really, from Brock Purdy against the Lions.
So give me a couple minutes. I'll give you my lifetime timeline on Purdy. Of course, like everyone else on the planet, I was very skeptical early on. Frankly, I never thought he was Tyler Badgett, though, or Vinny Cutlets, or whatever his name is with the Giants. Like, I thought I saw more than that,
On Tommy Cutlets.
Right. I mean, I didn't think he was Duck Hodges. I mean, like, I gave him more credit than that out of the shebang. But really, I credited Shanahan for much of his rookie year. And to be very honest, I thought Purdy was a little on the lucky side as a rookie. Like, a lot of his quote mistakes he didn't pay for, or if he was a little late on a throw or tried to make an arm strength throw that he couldn't quite make, he got away with them more than I thought he would going forward. Small sample size, got a little lucky. And frankly, I liked Pickett more than him on week 1 before these teams snapped the football. And Pickett was coming off an awesome preseason, and Purdy, to me, was more of a product of the system. My tune quickly changed on that, of course. I mean, they're not close at this point. But I always equate him to Kurt Warner. Like if there was Twitter and those things back then, when he goes from bagging groceries or stocking groceries to leading the greatest show on turf, we all would have said, it's Mike Martz, it's Falk, it's Holt, it's Orlando Pace. It's almost the same situation. It's Bruce. There's Hall of Famers everywhere. He's just, facilitating the football. But then you do it long enough, and then you do it with the Cardinals, and then you end up in the Hall of Fame. Maybe there's something to this Kurt Warner guy that, you know what I mean? Like,
and funny because Kurt Warner is one of the biggest Brock Purdy fans, and he keeps breaking down the film and is like, I don't know what people want from this guy. Look how good he's playing NFL quarterback. And, it probably even hits home a little bit more for him because, maybe just a couple of newspaper articles back then, some guys on TV on a couple of channels. Now it's just a wave of everybody that wants to say that Purdy's either this best thing over here in the world or this worst thing over here in the world. In reality, I think we just have to embrace and appreciate that when he completed his first NFL pass as Mr. Irrelevant, that was something that's never been done in the history of the game for the guy who was the last pick in the draft. So it's just really a phenomenal story for what he's doing, and we got to leave the hyperbole and the rest of the stuff out of it.
Yep. And I know we got time to get to, but I mean, Warner would be the perfect analyst for this because he is an analyst now too. And even what Warner didn't wow you like Mahomes. But people, including me, including you, including everyone listening, don't realize how difficult it is to play in this league on schedule with timing and anticipation. Drawing up the plays, taking it from the whiteboard to the field is very, very difficult. And the last 2 things I want to talk about are his playmaking and his running. We made the joke that Pat Mahomes is 1 mile an hour faster than everybody chasing him. Purdy's got a little bit of that to him. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Not going to be a good 40. He's not going to beat people in a flat out race in spandex or whatever. But I do say my last challenge with him is the weather. I mean, weather to me, I thought he was really rough in those weather games. And a lot of it's because his superpower can't be as strong. And I don't think he's got the big overpowering Josh Allen-ness to overtake things. But to his credit, 2 weeks ago, his best drive was the last one.
Exactly. Yeah, and weather's not going to be a problem in Las Vegas. But it's something that's going to follow him, and he's got to prove throughout his career. Yeah, because if you're throwing with timing and your receivers don't have great footing, it's harder to do that as well. Harder to drive a throw if the wind is sideways, and there's conditions,
and that's coming in future years,
right? And it'll happen, and there'll be those games, especially in January, and
playoffs if you're not at home, and right.
It's just something to watch with him, and that's why the 6'5", 240 guys go in the first round, and the guys that don't have cannon arms, nobody wants to believe in, and they got to prove it. And right now, Brock Purdy's absolutely proven it, doing some special things, and only his second year in his first full season as a starter. And to your point, last year he was really frenetic on some of those scrambling around plays. It's like, oh my God, my head's on fire. I got to do something. And he just barely gets out of a sack, throws the ball away, or makes a play. And it's like, oh, that could have gone really bad. Things are much slower for him this year. That is one of the big things I've noticed, an improvement from Brock Purdy last year in his run and what he looks like right now.
No question.
A guy that nobody has to talk themselves into believing in is Patrick Mahomes. And
he's all right.
Against over the Baltimore Ravens. Next. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is sponsored by BetterHelp Online Therapy. Sometimes we all need the opportunity to get something off our chest, big or small. Certain things can really start to get to you. And the key to all of it is you can't let the small thing become a big thing. And that's why it's so important to let that out, especially to someone who's unbiased in your life. So that is where therapy comes in. And therapy can be different for everyone. Most of us have a lot bigger problems than our favorite sports team, even though that sports team could potentially sometimes, and I've seen it with my listeners, we actually have therapy podcasts sometimes on Locked On 49ers after big losses. That would have been today's podcast. That's what I was preparing for in the first half of that game. Even though there's more important things in life, even that's something that you might need to talk to a therapist about. It's important to get those things off your chest so it doesn't bother the rest of your life. So if you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon and get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Kansas City Chiefs, once again, we've got a rematch of the Super Bowl following the 2019 season with the 49ers and the Kansas City Chiefs. And this game was the opposite in the second half of 49ers Lions, but almost identical in the first half, except the team that jumped out to an early lead held on to that lead in the second half of this one, Matt, as the Chiefs rolled over and I say rolled over, I mean, there was only 3 points scored in the second half, Matt. It was 17-7 at halftime. It was 17-10 final score, Chiefs over the Ravens.
So a story, I mean, I'm not trying to excuse it away, is Lamar didn't play great, and that's undeniable, especially considering, playoff level quarterbacking, et cetera. He did not play great. By no means am I willing to say this guy's a bum, he'll never win anything in his life, loser, that kind of stuff makes me bonkers. But I do think there are a couple stats that really tell the story in this one, and it's 3 turnovers against 0. It's 8 penalties against 3. It's 37 and a half minutes of time of possession against 22 and a half. That's the Chiefs kind of sticking it to the Ravens in ball control, not making mistakes. I really thought, third downs were very much in favor of Kansas City.
About to bring up third downs. Yep. Baltimore was only 3 of 11 on third down.
3 of 11.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not just box score scouting, but I mean, I think that really translates to what we saw. And a big thing that stuck out to me was only 4 carries in the first half by Ravens running backs, very few throughout the course of the game, and they were all short yardage situations. I know your backs aren't your best player, but your running game is phenomenal against a not so great run defense. And just because you allowed a very impressive drive to open this game, I don't think you had to abandon the run or get out of your comfort zone. And I thought they got very tight as a team.
Patrick Mahomes' playoff version, is he just a completely different player? Because it's almost
I think you could even mention Kelsey and the whole team too.
Oh, Kelsey, early in the playoffs, I was like, this team's done. Kelsey looked like Kelsey looked like he had aged 10 years since he started dating Taylor Swift. Not to bring her up for the factor, but just like the timeline of it. It was like, man, maybe all this is a lot for Travis Kelce because, maybe he's looking to settle down and, because there's something, he was not moving right. And then the last 2 games, it was like, oh, there's Travis Kelce. I haven't seen that guy in just a little bit. He's looking a little bit smoother, making plays, 11 catches for 116 and a touchdown. And look, Rashee Rice had 8 catches for 46 in this game. One big catch for Marquez Valdez-Scantling, which was important to seal this victory, but he only had 2 catches on the game. You're not getting a lot else. And even those 8 catches for Rice, it was only 46 yards. There was not a lot of big plays there. 11 yards was the longest. Like Mahomes to Kelce was enough in this game. Can it continue to be enough? But Kelce, turned back the clock again. And it looked a lot more like vintage Kelce, especially the last 2 weeks, and especially in this game. And obviously Mahomes is going to go to him. And it might have been all 8 of the third down conversions, because Kansas City wasn't amazing on third down either, but they had 18 third down opportunities and they converted 8 of them, 5 more third downs than the Baltimore Ravens were able to. And what were all of them to Travis Kelce?
Sure seemed that way. So I've heard these analogies with the Chiefs really over the last couple of years, that they're kind of like the Golden State Warriors that make sure they get themselves in the playoffs, but don't kill themselves during the regular season, and they turn it up a notch. Like, I've kind of always thought the NFL doesn't work that way. There's not enough games. It's too physical. Every game is a battle more so than an NBA game. But maybe there's a little something to it, and I don't mean it to that exact analogy, and more just Mahomes, Kelce, Reed, the whole face of the foundation dripping off of Mahomes really is just better in big games. The bigger the game, the better Mahomes is in terms of, like that. I keep referencing that first drive. His processing was so good. It's just boom, boom, manipulate safety, boom, get it out. So smart. It's decisions with the football, manipulating defenses, the little things like we just talked about with Purdy, not the wow, unbelievable throw, underhand, no look. Just all the quarterbacky stuff I thought was so good from him, especially all postseason. But I also want to give a lot of credit to these defenses. Roquan Smith and Kyle Hamilton are all over the place, and
Roquan's everywhere.
Yeah. And the Ravens don't allow a second half point. Let's give their defensive staff a lot of credit. And
they did the job. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. They did their job.
They have to be looking at the offense like, guys, come on. Could you not get in the end zone one time? We stopped Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. And look, and I think there's a lesson for Dan Campbell here with what Andy Reid did in this game. Pacheco had 24 carries for only 68 yards. He was only averaging 2.8 yards per carry, but it didn't matter. Short in the game. You got the lead, and they held on to it, whereas the Lions
on the road
were not able to. Right.
Yeah, 100%. And boy, I mentioned the Ravens D, but that's sort of burying the lead. The Chiefs D was the best unit of the 4. They had all kinds of problems with blitz pickup. Lamar was under a lot of pressure. Spagnuolo threw a ton at them. I thought their defensive backs locked down the receivers well and were all over the field. And you could just tell, not the whole offense, but Jackson in particular wasn't playing on timing and rhythm as much as he should, or we don't have an answer for this hot route on this blitz. I got to hold it and improvise, and it's a tough way to live.
Absolutely. Right now, and Steve Spagnuolo, in Kansas City Chiefs fans know it too. He's reaching cult status in Kansas City right now. There's a T-shirt that I think Justin Reed made up or is selling for his charity that's like selling out like hotcakes. That's Steve Spagnuolo T-shirt. He did an unbelievable job. And if you're giving out, awards for this game, I think he's the first one in line. It's not Mahomes. It's not Kelce. It's not even Andy Reid. Steve Spagnuolo gets the MVP award for the Kansas City Chiefs advancing to the Super Bowl.
Yeah. And I guess this is a couple things. Kelce, it blew me away that now he's caught more passes in the playoffs than any human ever. I'm like, he passed Jerry Rice already? Like, wow. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And now, the frequency that this team goes to championships and Super Bowls is unheard of. It's a Brady-like pace, but even more so, to be honest. And now Reed is probably going to go down as one of the top 2 or 3 greatest offensive play callers ever. I think it was Romo that said that. He's like, it's Bill Walsh and Reed. They're the two best offensive play callers ever. But what about Spags? I mean, is he Jimmy Johnson? I mean, who are the best D coordinators ever? I mean, Belichick's a head coach, but I mean, like, he's going to be in that conversation too.
Absolutely, especially if they keep bringing home the hardware. So there's only one more contest in between them and that. And you're starting to chisel their face in the Mount Rushmores of all time greats at what they do. Absolutely,
like Kelsey, Mahomes, Reed, and now Spags are all about as good as anyone's ever done it at those positions.
Absolutely. Tough way to go for the Lions and the Ravens. Successful season. Probably doesn't feel like that on Monday morning.
That's my quick question to you. Is this a successful season for the Ravens? I bet most people listening are like, no, that's terrible. You were best in DVOA. I almost think anyone that makes a Final Four at a successful season.
It's for sure a successful season zoomed out.
Yeah.
Doesn't feel that way. It probably is a lot easier for Lions fans to feel it was successful than Ravens fans.
Yes.
Put it that way. But more expectations. So that kind of changes. For the Lions, though, like, is there a potential for a one and done here? They don't have necessarily a Hall of Fame quarterback, even though Jared Goff's probably underrated in a lot of ways. But one of the biggest catalysts for how good this team has been is their offensive coordinator, Ben Johnson. And
100%.
he was awesome. He had a great plan for the 49ers in this game. And Ben Johnson, Lions offensive coordinator, Mike MacDonald, Ravens defensive coordinator. We've given them a lot of praise for the games and the game plans they had, even though their teams lost. They're free to sign as head coaches, and they're both interviewing, according to Tom Pelissero, for both of the open head coaching jobs in Washington and Seattle now this week.
Yeah, and you would think the Ravens could withstand it more than the Lions, just because their track record of history and their quarterback and
defensive coordinators in this regime.
Exactly. Not that one's better than the other, but no, the Lions absolutely have that blueprint of being a potential one and done. Like, I don't want to go back to should they have drafted? Is that too early to draft a running back and a linebacker and that whole conversation? But they're going to pick 29th or 30th. Like, when organizations have to do that and don't have early picks, it's a little harder to maintain. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to bring everything back to the Steelers, but like the Steelers and the Patriots that always pick in the 20s for decades, you don't go get a left tackle. You don't get a pass rusher. You get kind of what falls to you, you know?
Cornerback, which is
right, and they need a corner
on the defensive side of the ball for the Lions, and that gets a lot more difficult, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's a little easier when you have early picks once in a while, at least, you know.
Yeah, and it looked great in the first half. And in fact, a lot of folks were saying, "See, first round running back. Look how dynamic Jahmyr Gibbs looks right now." And all of a sudden,
he's great.
And he is great. Yeah, absolutely. Run and pass. And he is awesome and super talented. But fumbles. And he's not a bell cow guy, and he gets like, how many carries did he have? 9 carries. That's kind of like what he gets. And you're like, okay, first round pick. What about a corner? Like, what about the other? So it's still out there. It was like, okay, the resources now, and the money you have to spend on some of these other positions, and 12 carries for Jahmyr Gibbs for 45 yards in this game, and obviously,
you're going to extend Goff, and Decker's going to get old, and then you got to pay Penei Sewell and Hutchinson, and like things get tough.
Yep. Yep. So that it'll be really interesting going forward, and fascinating what happens to those teams that were eliminated. And of course, we're going to have entire episodes dedicated to some of these teams in the coming weeks here, and how
coordinator stuff we'll talk about tomorrow.
Get over the hump, and we'll have a lot more about the coaching news as well. So
last thing, sorry, I don't want Lions fans to think, boy, Williamson thinks they're going to fall from grace. I'm just saying, they should be super excited. It should be 99% enthusiasm, but we've seen, Marino went to the Super Bowl and never went back. It's just tough.
Absolutely. Yeah. It wouldn't be the first time. And it's difficult in this league, man. It is so hard. Stick with us every day. We'll have the Super Bowl covered. It's also Senior Bowl week. It's draft season now for a couple of more teams that were eliminated in the AFC and NFC Championship game. Williamson and I have you covered every single day. So stay tuned in here, and we'll talk to you tomorrow. Peacock and Williamson.